This is AIM Agenda. Thanks for being with us. Joining me now from Rooty Hill RSL, one of the local members there, Ed Husic, and from Melbourne, Liberal MP Josh Frydenberg. Gents, good to see you. Josh, on the immigration debate, first of all, are you comfortable with where this is at the moment? Both sides accusing the other of demonising foreigners. It doesn't sound edifying at all.
Look, it's not an ideal way you describe it in terms of demonising foreigners, but in terms of the 457 argument that the government's put up, I mean, that's a smokescreen, and that's just responding to the Labor Party's paymasters in the union movement, because the reality is that the nurses, the engineers, the doctors and the accountants who come to Australia under 457s are doing a lot to strengthen our economy. And there has been only one successful prosecution about 457s where they were abused. And so I think that this government has overseen a dramatic increase in the number of 457s, of more than 50% in the last year. And in January of this year, Chris Bowen, when he was the Minister for Immigration, said there were no problems with 457s. So I find it passing strange, Kieran, that the Prime Minister has sought to raise this issue just coincidentally at the time that the union movement is starting to put pressure on the government.
Ed Husic, there has been a bit of a turnaround on government policy here, almost an epiphany that things aren't working as they should be, as the Immigration Department just a month ago said things were looking okay on this front.
Well, I think a lot of the people that have expressed concerns on this issue, Kieran, have done so for quite some time, but it really does reflect the fact that when the Howard government brought these in, they were on the one hand under-investing in TAFE and setting up duplicate systems that would compete against TAFE instead of actually properly funding vocational training. We saw all sorts of skill shortages arise, and 457s were the sort of the stopgap measure in many respects to deal with the fact that when you look at a declining population and declining spend on education under their government, that this was being used, as I said, as a stopgap measure. Now, people have raised concerns, and we've tried to respond to those concerns, but recognise too, 457s do have a part to play. You can't not, basically expect employers to be in a situation where they can't fill labour shortages, but at the same time too, I think we've got to respond rightly to concerns about the integrity of the system.
Josh Frydenberg, on to the coalition side of politics, and there have been some difficulties when it comes to the costings and the promises on tax cuts and so on. Yesterday, Joe Hockey made some statements about removing the tripling of the low tax-free threshold. The government accusing him and his office of doctoring the transcript later to remove the language where he was sort of playing down the impact of that tax measure. Does the coalition need to get its act in order here well before the campaign and well before Joe Hockey says he'll do it, which is during the election campaign proper?
Look, we have our act together, Kieran. The bottom line is that Australian families will be better off under a coalition government. We'll have tax cuts that we'll be announcing, but also we have said that we're going to remove the carbon tax, and that's automatically going to reduce the electricity bill for Australian families and businesses by 10% to start with, and that's a significant benefit to families that are facing cost of living pressures. So we know that when we were in government, our record was to bequeath a golden legacy to the Australian people of 2 million new jobs, 22% increase in real wages, and zero government debt. We paid back $96 billion
without the details, Josh, without the detail of the tax cuts and so on until the campaign, doesn't it make the coalition vulnerable between now and then to these assertions that you're going to remove the tax cuts, remove the pension rises, without the detail to rebut those government claims?
But look, Kieran, the truth is we can't take the government at its word about the state of the budget. I mean, the Prime Minister promised more than 160 times that we would have a budget surplus. The Treasurer more than 300 times. The Minister for Finance more than 150 times. And now we find out we're probably facing another budget deficit of around $10 billion plus. This is on top of, cumulative budget deficits which are the greatest in Australia's history. So how can we actually take this government for its word? We don't know the true state of the budget and the black hole that we will find if we get a chance to form government.
Well, Ed, that's fair enough, isn't it? That the coalition is just saying it will have the detail out there, but they want to see the final numbers first. We've had this discussion before, but they have made the commitment that voters will be better off. That's the bottom line, as Josh said.
Kieran, the things we've heard over the last 12 months have included that we should go to an election straight away, we should go to an election now, that if we go to an election now, this is the cry of Conservatives, we've got our policies ready. We've had them make these statements before. I think they said they had like 49 different policies already ready. And when the time comes for them to cough up, two things become evident. One, they're trying to be all things to all people. That is, on the one hand, they say that they'll be fiscally conservative, that they'll make sure that they can bring the budget into surplus, but they ditch that promise. They don't provide any evidence. They say they'll get rid of their household assistance package one day and then the next day say they'll do it, but without providing the detail. And worse still, now we get an admission from Joe Hockey that he's going to wait 10 days after the formal announcement of the election to reveal his policy. So sometime in August we're going to get detail. Now, they've either got to stump up, Kieran, and say exactly what they're going to do. They cannot treat the Australian public with disrespect and hold back what precisely they're going to do and then just skate in and then shock people after the election.
I want to move on and talk about a few other issues. One in Victoria, seeing this in the Northern Territory and Victoria at the moment, governments at that level in a fair bit of difficulty. Josh, it's an unhelpful distraction, no doubt, for Liberals in your state.
Look, I think that will work itself out in Victoria. Ted Baillieu is doing a very good job. He's made a number of significant announcements around infrastructure. He's taken the lead on education reform. He forced the government into a humiliating backflip on its cut to hospital funding in Victoria. Tanya Plibersek has got mud all over her face over that. So Ted is doing a very good job. But at the end of the day, the Australian voters do distinguish between the state and the federal levels. And at a federal level, they know that the Julia Gillard and her government are on the nose, that they've delivered a bad economy, and that it's time for a change. So I'm very confident that they will make the right decision when the election is called.
And Ed Husic, finally to you. You're at Rooty Hill, as we can see behind you, the RSL club. It's your local area. You'd be happy if there was a Western Sydney blitz every week, but the Prime Minister's not doing much with the electorate, is she? With the voters, everything's very planned.
No, well, you have to get out and about. I mean, but before, you can't move on to that without me having an opportunity to respond to some of Josh's points. I mean, this is remarkable. One of the senior advisors to the Victorian Premier has been referred to an anti-corruption commission investigation and is still on the payroll. I mean, this is astounding. And in the Northern Territory, 6 months after the election, you've already got the resignation of a key figure and the possibility of a leadership challenge up there 6 months in. I mean, it is just astounding that these state and territory governments, the way that they've been performing. In my state, we've got the horror of $3 billion of education cuts being rolled out, including to TAFE here, which will put further
I thought you were going to talk about
skill
Eddie Obeid there for a second, Ed. I thought you were going to talk about Eddie Obeid.
It's just absolutely astounding that you could have that. And for Josh to say he's made some great announcements, yeah, he made an announcement that he'd refer one of his people to an anti-corruption commission, then kept him on. As for here, it's great to have the focus in Western Sydney. Yeah. It's great to have people here in Western Sydney that have got the opportunity now to obviously directly raise their interests and issues with the Prime Minister and a range of different ministers out here. And we've had a series of those visits over the last few days, including in particular important infrastructure announcements for the M4, which I think will be welcome, particularly in Western Sydney where traffic congestion is a big issue.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Josh Frydenberg and Ed Husic. We'll see you soon. Let's cross now to